Tonight, the Middle East is staring at a moment that could quietly reshape the future of this conflict in ways the world may not fully understand yet. In a sudden and highly coordinated operation, Israel launched precision strikes deep inside Tehran, targeting multiple airports and critical aviation infrastructure in what analysts are calling one of the boldest and most calculated moves of this entire war so far. Explosions lit up the skyline, aircraft were reportedly destroyed on the ground, and key logistical systems were disrupted almost instantly. But even that was not the real story, because within hours of the strikes, Iran confirmed something far more serious. Its top intelligence chief, one of the most powerful and secretive figures in the country's security apparatus, had been killed. This was not a random casualty. This was not a mistake. This was a deliberate attempt to remove the man responsible for protecting the system itself. And when a nation loses the person in charge of seeing threats before they happen, the impact is immediate, but the consequences can unfold slowly and unpredictably. To understand why this matters so much, you have to understand what that role represents. The head of intelligence is not just another official sitting behind a desk. This is the individual who oversees counterintelligence operations, tracks foreign threats, monitors internal dissent, and coordinates covert activities across borders. This is the person who connects information from multiple sources and turns it into action. Remove that person, and you don't just lose leadership, you lose clarity, you lose coordination, you lose the ability to respond with precision. And in the middle of an already escalating conflict, that kind of disruption can be as damaging as a direct military strike. But what makes this even more dangerous is that it doesn't happen in isolation, because at the exact same time this leadership blow was delivered, Israel targeted Tehran's airports, not as symbolic locations, but as critical hubs of movement, supply, and strategic coordination. These airports are believed to play a key role in how Iran moves personnel, weapons, and resources, both dakhil the country and across the region. They are not just transportation centers, they are arteries of influence. When those arteries are disrupted, the entire system begins to slow down. The ability to respond quickly is reduced. The ability to project power beyond borders is weakened. And in a conflict where timing can determine success or failure, even a short delay can have massive consequences. But this is where the situation becomes even more complex. Because when you combine the elimination of a top intelligence figure with the destruction of key infrastructure, you are not just weakening your opponent, you are forcing them into a position where they must respond. And that response is rarely calm, calculated, or predictable. History has shown that when nations are pushed into a corner, especially in moments where leadership and capability are both under pressure, they tend to act in ways that are designed not just to retaliate, but to restore deterrence. Because deterrence is everything in conflicts like this. If Iran appears weak, if it appears unable to respond after such a direct hit, it risks inviting further attacks. But if it responds too aggressively, it risks triggering a larger war that could spiral beyond control. This is the tightrope that Iranian decision-makers are now walking, and it is one of the most dangerous positions any country can find itself in. And yet, the situation is even more unstable than it appears on the surface, because there are growing questions about who is actually making those decisions right now. Reports and intelligence assessments suggest that Iran's leadership structure may not be operating at full capacity. Questions have been raised about the condition and involvement of the supreme leader, with some indications that decision-making authority may be shifting or fragmented. In times of stability, that might not immediately lead to chaos. But in the middle of a rapidly escalating conflict, leadership uncertainty can create serious risks. Decisions may be delayed, or worse, made by competing factions with different priorities. Communication can break down, signals can become unclear, and in international conflict, unclear signals are one of the fastest ways to escalate tensions. Because when one side cannot clearly understand the intentions of the other, it often assumes the worst. At the same time, Iran has already begun to send signals of its own. Officials have issued warnings of retaliation, describing the recent strikes as acts that will not go unanswered. Military activity in the region has shown signs of escalation, with increased movement, heightened alert levels, and preparations that suggest a response is being planned. But what that response looks like remains uncertain. It could be limited and symbolic, designed to send a message without triggering further escalation. Or it could be broader and more aggressive, targeting not just military assets but strategic positions that could draw in additional players. And this is where the situation moves beyond a simple two-sided conflict. Because the reality is, this is not just about Israel and Iran anymore. The United States is already deeply involved, both politically and strategically. Regional allies are watching closely, some quietly preparing for the possibility of wider conflict. And global markets are reacting in real time. Oil prices are beginning to reflect uncertainty as fears grow over potential disruptions to key shipping routes. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical energy choke points in the world, has once again become a focal point of concern. Any disruption there would not just impact the region, it would send shockwaves through the global economy. And that is why what is happening right now matters far beyond the immediate headlines. But perhaps the most important aspect of this moment is the strategy behind it. Because what we are seeing is not random escalation. It is a calculated approach designed to apply pressure at multiple levels simultaneously. By targeting leadership, infrastructure, and strategic capability all at once, Israel appears to be attempting to create a situation where Iran is forced to respond under conditions that are less than ideal. It is a strategy that aims to control the pace of escalation, to shape the battlefield before the next move is even made. But strategies like this come with risks, because while they can create advantage, they can also provoke reactions that are difficult to predict or contain. And this is where the situation becomes deeply uncertain. Because while Israel may be aiming to weaken and disrupt, Iran may interpret these actions as an existential threat. And when a country believes its core systems are under threat, its response is often driven not just by strategy, but by survival. That is when conflicts tend to escalate beyond their original scope. That is when new actors get involved. That is when the risk of miscalculation increases dramatically. And in a region already filled with tension, alliances, and competing interests, it would not take much for this situation to expand into something much larger. So as we look at where things stand right now, the picture is both clear and uncertain at the same time. Clear, because the events themselves are undeniable. A top intelligence figure has been eliminated, key infrastructure has been targeted, warnings of retaliation have been issued. But uncertain, because what happens next is still unfolding. Will Iran choose a measured response, designed to de-escalate while maintaining credibility? Or will it respond in a way that accelerates the conflict and draws in additional players? Will diplomatic channels find a way to slow things down, or has the situation already moved beyond that point? These are the questions that are now shaping the next phase of this conflict. And they are questions that do not have easy answers. Because in situations like this, outcomes are not determined by a single decision, but by a series of reactions, each building on the last. One move leads to another, one escalation leads to the next, and before long, the situation can evolve into something far more complex than anyone initially intended. And that is why tonight matters, because this is not just another headline. This is a moment where multiple lines are being crossed at once, a moment where pressure is being applied at levels that test not just military capability, but political stability and strategic judgment. A moment where the balance between control and chaos becomes increasingly fragile. And as the world watches, the stakes continue to rise with every passing hour. Because in conflicts like this, it is not always the largest attack that changes everything. Sometimes, it is the most precise one. The one that targets the system itself. The one that forces decisions under pressure. The one that sets off a chain reaction that no one can fully control once it begins. And as we move forward from this moment, that is the risk that now hangs over the region. The risk that what we are seeing is not the peak of this crisis, but the beginning of something much bigger. Because once actions reach this level, once leadership is targeted, once infrastructure is disrupted, Once warnings turn into threats, the path forward becomes harder to predict and even harder to control. And the question that now remains is not just what will happen next, but whether anyone involved still has the ability to stop it before it goes too far. And tonight, for the first time in this rapidly evolving conflict, that uncertainty feels more real than ever.